All right, and we are live. Just want to leave it for a few minutes for people to populate. But Jonathan, welcome to
Thank
the
you.
first Renegade
Yes,
Report live stream.
indeed. Let's see if anyone joins us.
Yeah,
Nice
all
when you've got a podcast that downloads tens of thousands of times every week, and then you start all over again on YouTube, and you got maybe one or two people tuning in. So let's see how that
right.
goes.
Well, we've got 7 viewers so far, so that's not too shabby at all. I'm going to
Hello,
leave it.
7 viewers.
Yeah, I'm going to leave it for another minute or two, and we
How many
will start.
disciples did Jesus have?
12, I believe. I'm up to 10 now. Almost there.
Well, we're
More
almost at Jesus level.
more viewers than Jesus coming up very, very soon. And now, for the life of me, I can't see the comments. Can you see the comments somewhere? The chat?
I cannot, for the life of me, see the chat.
Shit. Where do we go for that?
We're such professionals, Ramon. We're such professionals. I don't know. Let's go YouTube and see if we can find it there quickly.
Yeah, okay, let me just load that quickly. What is it?
If you're swearing at us, we cannot see you.
Maybe it's for the better. Oh, there you go. Live now. 14 watching.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. First, I was here, lol. Joe, Vanessa, Ladybird, welcome. So good to have you all here. So, I think we may as well start, Jonathan, before we're wasting anyone else's time on this. So, do you want to give the background or must I?
Oh, well, we can both go through it, but I think go through, the Sargon issue quite well. So perhaps start with that, and then we can discuss the evolution.
Right. So, Sargon of Akkad is what is called a classically liberal YouTuber. He makes videos against feminism and the EU and things like that. So anyway, he said the N-word on someone else's live stream, and he was mocking the alt-right, because it was an alt-right live stream, in essence. And he called them white N-word. And I can't say the word that I want to say because YouTube will make this video disappear.
It'll downrate it. Yeah.
So I can't even be honest on YouTube. I can't say the word. But anyway, so this was 10 months ago. Patreon last week just deleted his account just like that and used that example as a reason to do so. Despite the fact that he did it on someone else's channel, Patreon didn't fund that channel, and Sargon didn't use his Patreon money to go onto that channel. So Patreon violated their own terms of service at the end of the day. So that was the beginning, really. And then the repercussions have been harsh and severe. Jonathan, do you know how many people we've lost so far?
How many we've lost?
Yeah.
Well, I only know the money, Ramon. That's all I really care about. The viewers are neither here nor there. As you know, I just don't care about the people. But yes, tell me how many people we've lost.
Yeah, you only care about the shekels. Well, I don't know how many people, but we lost over $200 now due to this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think the mistake Patreon made was, a lot of people said that Alex Jones was wrong and it shouldn't have happened. People who don't like Alex Jones on the right said that as well. He should never have been deplatformed, and that it was going to be a slippery slope. Slippery slope is one of those things that people like to say is a fallacy, when in fact it really isn't. It does happen, and so we're seeing that now. We're seeing the progression of that. Once you get rid of the people you really don't like on the far right, if you consider Alex Jones far right, but once you get rid of those people, then you get rid of the people next in line. And so I think what happened with Patreon was also that they kind of hit on the intellectual dark web, and as that group of people has mentioned, they've been having emails between themselves of about 40 people CC'd on those mails. Give you an idea of that network. I have no doubt it includes obviously Peterson, Rubin, Shapiro, the Weinstein brothers. It'll include all the Quillette authors and editors. So it's quite an influential group of people, and I think that's where they kind of struck the rock, so to speak, in that the intellectual dark web said, well, we're going to we can't put up with this.
Right. Because, I mean, it's people like that Patreon was created for, in a way, without intention. It's people that can't rely on advertising, they can't rely on big sponsorships for their work. So Patreon came along and just basically became a medium between supporters and the creator, and so the supporters can pay for the creators, donate to them on a monthly basis, and that way the creators can make money and have enough money to sustain whatever they're creating without needing sponsorships or begging other people to fund them, in a way. So for a show like us, we are not advertiser friendly at all. So
no,
not at all. And maybe it's better that way, because I think advertising will determine the show more than we like to think, especially in South Africa. If you're Joe Rogan, yeah, right, they come knocking at your door and you can say whatever you want. But in South Africa, they're worried about brand. So Patreon is perfect, for us. People like us, people want to give us a bit of money every month. We use that money to develop merchandise, to develop the website, to develop all sorts of things for the podcast, make it bigger, better, stronger. The problem is now trust is gone. And Patreon without trust is like YouTube without videos. It just doesn't work. There's nothing else that keeps people on Patreon other than trusting the platform to pay them out. And if Patreon can unilaterally just take that away from you without a warning and with many vagaries along the way, trust is absolutely gone, and there's absolutely no point in sticking around.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with that. I'm quite excited in some ways to see Silicon Valley get handed its ass. It's a long time coming. I don't think this is happening actually quick enough, and I worry that some momentum will be lost. I do hope that whatever Peterson and Ruben have in the pipeline happens soon, because I actually would like to see Patreon go down. I would very much appreciate the collapse of the company. I think that just as there's sort of this thing where they'll take down certain voices that they don't appreciate, and anyone who thinks this is an error or this is a couple of people making a decision is completely naive to the bigger picture here and the sort of cultural battle that's going down, really. And it's good that there's starting to be casualties on both sides. So there's voices that are being taken down on the one side, and I would like to see Patreon hurt. And I would like them to serve as a warning to Google, to Facebook, to all these other sites that have started to maneuver politically, to say to them, well, guys, you can do that if you really want, but it might bite you.
Yeah, true. And as I said, without that trust, Patreon doesn't need to exist anymore. So yeah, the more competition, the better. But what is quite ironic and perhaps unintended is that even the so-called progressive or leftist types of content creators are losing patrons, because patrons don't trust the service.
Yes.
It's not about the creator not trusting, it's patrons themselves not trusting it. So people have lost thousands of dollars in a week, and that impacts their monthly income, their ability to pay tax, all sorts of things. And it appears that Patreon really just has been extremely tone deaf to this whole thing. Instead of just reinstating Sargon or giving clear reasons why they banned him in the first place, just say, we don't like his ideology, and we get it. So they'll never do that.
I find it interesting. I mean, firstly, one of the reasons why the left is also hurt by this is because Sargon is arguably on the left in many areas. So it's funny that they picked on him, because I think there are a number of other individuals still on the network they could have picked on, and the blowout would have been not nearly as bad. Sargon is classically liberal, but many of his positions are definitely on the left. So I think not only in that the platform's not trusted and people in general aren't trusting that, but it was shown that both sides can be affected by this. But I do find it sort of humorous, and now my thought pattern has gone off kilter. I was just going to say I found it humorous about Patreon, and I've lost it. If I get it back, I'll let you know.
Right.
Sorry.
So we were discussing getting off the platform after this, and then Sam Harris deleted his account. Sam Harris has what's called, I can't swear, damn it, has F-off money. Jesus, I sound like a 5-year-old. Has a lot of money, and he just canceled $50,000 a month by deleting his Patreon account, just like that. Now, Sam is the most boring person in the world, but he seems quite principled. At least he's principled in this regard. So
I think there are levels, though. I just need to point something out. I mean, I find it interesting, the people that are getting into the space, for example. I mean, I like Peterson and I like Ruben, but I mean, I'm not that excited to make Peterson and Ruben, multi-millionaires or billionaires or the back of the Patreon alternative. Like, because right place, right time, right influence. And I mean, that really applies to Ruben. I mean, Peterson, you can make a good argument for just maximizing his influence. But but Ruben really, to end up as Jack Conte 2.0 is quite hilarious. Harris as well, yes, principled in some respects, but Harris actually has been threatening to get off Patreon for about a year.
That's true.
Year and a half. Let me tell you, Sam does not like people taking a slice of his pie.
Why? Because he's one of you, Jonathan.
And well, there's your latent anti-Semitism again. But Sam really doesn't appreciate that, and he basically made that quite clear about Patreon, that he didn't like how the network worked. He didn't really like the control they had, and if you listen to what he was essentially saying, 8% of every dollar to lose was quite a lot of dollars. I'm sure when you're talking $50,000, that's money.
Sure.
He's been trying to get people off Patreon for a while. I think he's been quite successful as direct subscription through his website. I also think that when he did this, he specifically in his message said, look, he's going to delete his Patreon in 24 hours. Please, if you still want to support him, you're welcome to go and subscribe. I would reckon that a lot of what he lost, he probably gained, either by people moving or by people who said, oh, look how principled Sam Harris is. And then they went and supported him.
He's making so much money from his own website, his own meditation app, his own talks, and the podcast itself, that 50 grand is maybe 20% of his income a month. No one thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways to swing it. I do think, whatever, free market and all that stuff, and people can make their own decisions and own choices. But I think we need to be careful about giving lots of sort of moral points to anyone in this game, because, well, I'd give us some moral points, for example, because we don't get paid a freaking cent to do the podcast. Neither of us have yet to draw any actual money out of the podcast. So of the Patreon money we've made, we bought some things to try help us put some stuff on YouTube, some stands and things. We've paid for some
literally Apple iPhone holders for desks.
Yeah, like selfie stick type things. We've paid for some sort of studio type work and some graphic design. So neither of us have made a cent off the podcast as it stands right now. And we, as you heard at the beginning, we lost $200 by basically, number one, telling people we're going to bail on Patreon, and number two, by Patreon having this whole controversy as well. I'm sure some people just said, I'm done with him. So moral points to us because, well, we said we're going to bail and it actually was a cost, right?
Well, I mean, this is an ethical thing for us, right? We care about trust, and we care about trust that our listeners have in us and our patrons have in us as well.
And look, I mean, let's be honest. It's a matter of time before Sargon of Akkad is got a massive following. I don't know what I follow him on YouTube, but I don't check his subscription base, but it's probably around 500,000, I would imagine.
It's over. It's almost 800,000 now.
There you go. So, that's a big player. If Patreon removes us off the network, won't be, I mean, people who listen and people who support us will notice, which is all of a few thousand people who regularly are real fans, and Patreons, in the sort of 100 range, somewhere around the 200 range, somewhere in that region. But it wouldn't really make a blip, and it wouldn't make a difference. I think you cannot base yourself on those types of platforms where ultimately they're coming for you.
Yeah. So we've taken a position. We are losing money, but it's difficult. We weren't making money in the first place for ourselves, so it doesn't feel like a loss in that sense. Even though we do appreciate the patrons on Patreon, but we're saving up the money for something a bit more interesting that will be unveiled a bit later next year. So
I just want to respond to something. So just in the comments, sorry, I see Chris has written. So Adam wants to know if you've got 2 vapes, by the way.
No,
he's got like 6 vapes. What are you talking about?
I've got about 8 now. I bought another one.
The man has a problem.
Look how nice. Beautiful.
All right.
A seashell.
So, and then Christopher has said, Sam's supporting an ethical platform at the end of the day. Sure. But I've said what I feel about Sam's sort of positioning as well. He's not stupid in terms of his in terms of his PR and his marketing, and in terms of his effective altruism. That's true. He does try to support effective altruism, and he does give 10% of his income to an effective altruism campaign. I think he gives it to a malaria charity in Africa. And I can't really fault that, except to say that the best form of charity is that you do not advertise and nobody knows about. So Sam should do more of that, since he is very wealthy, and we should all do more of that. Without telling anyone. You don't have to signal your charity.
For those watching, Jonathan thinks everyone, or rather thinks no one, is ever altruistic. There's always something there. He's like the Frederick.
Of course. Of course. There's no such thing as altruism. It doesn't truly exist.
You're like the Friedrich Nietzsche of altruism. And he said, it's designed to make you feel good.
Dude, there's someone who does a lot of altruistic things, inverted commas, who on paper, if you put what I do on paper and whatever, it would look altruistic. Like, I can tell you that everything has its payoffs for everyone at some level. And even charity, I mean, I've been involved in relatively high-level charities, and I can tell you that even if it means once a year they have a sort of gala dinner, and it's a whole bunch of rich people who get to network with each other and all the rest of it, and if that's worthwhile to give the charity to, it doesn't make the charity less. It doesn't mean it doesn't help people. But
I'm getting off topic here, Jonathan. What?
Yeah. Well, I do want to get there is a sort of segue on this, which is this issue around Helen Zille and her son.
No. We need to tell the people what we are planning for next year first.
You wanted to go the plans? Well, we can do the plans later, man.
No, but people need to know. So
okay, do the plan. Then we'll discuss current topics.
Right. Okay. So basically, we have built a website. It's basically, well, not we. I know nothing about websites or website design. So we hired a good guy to do it for us. It's basically finished. And we will, unfortunately, have to bring Sam Harris into this. But we'll do the Sam Harris model. We will have a support link on the website, and we'll use something like PayFast or Zappa or PayPal, or all 3 of them. And you can do monthly donations, once-off donations, and then we'll find a way to reward you adequately with that. We still need to figure out why, because we were just going to put Patreon onto our website and leave it at that, but now we have to change the whole bloody thing, so it's going to be a bit delayed. Once the developer's back from holiday, which he's just basically been on, or just left rather on. So hopefully mid to end of January we'll have something for you on that. So if your wallet is burning with donations to Renegade Report, you can use our PayPal, which is somewhere. Check on Twitter; it's probably on there. Otherwise, just keep your money. Under no obligation to give it to us, except when our website's live, then you can use it then. And from next year, Jonathan and I have been discussing, we want to actually increase volume of content and frequency. So some weeks you might have 2 or 3 shows, some weeks you might have 1 or 0. We're still trying to figure out if irregular is better or regular is better, or have 1 regular and 2 or 3 irregular ones shows. So I mean, we'll see. Next year we want to really launch this into something much, much bigger than it already is. And to be fair, it really is quite large.
Yeah, and I think we've done well in the podcast space. I think YouTube is another element we want to work on. So we will try and YouTube as many shows as we can. That's not a promise on all of them, but as many as we can. Ultimately, I suppose the goal would be to easily have YouTube on all the shows. It's not always that simple to do that. So the rigs that you see that Joe Rogan has are actually really expensive. Clip Central actually has a similar rig to what Rogan uses. It's an AI sort of rig which has 3 cameras which are essentially track voice and then display, which they automatically follow the voice, follow the person, and then upload that sort of person onto the feed. So that stuff's all nice to have, not always accessible, still with some technical glitches, and there's technician issues and all of that kind of stuff. But we will work on that for sure. We also want to start putting out more content through the website as well, just to expand what we do. So it's not just maybe a podcast once a week, but maybe some more information or news that's relevant to you,
or articles,
or commentary, etc., etc. Yeah.
A few writers as well. Maybe. Let's have an emergent, classically liberal right-wing news hub. Why not? Let's see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think we should start answering questions, Jonathan.
Okay, fine.
Helen Ziller can wait.
Helen Ziller can wait. Well, there is a Helen Ziller question.
Well, let's first talk to White Barry. Now, that is probably already hate speech right there. Are there any controversy? Oh, White. I mean, he used the word white.
Oh, okay.
Expect a knock on the door from the police. Any controversial brands in ZA that you might consider for sponsorship? Listen, we will take basically anything for sponsorship if they don't tell us to change. Preferably brands that have really started to listen to us and know what we're about, and just say, here's money, here's what you need to say, and get on with it. It's a bit like Bill Burr. Bill Burr has a Monday podcast, and he advertises stamps.com, but he never sends letters. He's like, use stamps.com. I don't know why. If you send letters, they do something much better than anyone else, which is stamps. And but he mocks stamps.com, his own sponsor. And that makes it a great advert all the time.
Yeah.
Now stamps.com, fucking sorry.
I think though it needs to be understood that in South Africa, sponsors are terrified. They really are just terrified of their own shadows. They also hate criticism. And it's a weird thing that we have in the market, that the market hates criticism. So, for example, if I go onto Twitter and I criticize an insurance company, every other insurance company is going to avoid us like the plague. Because even though I criticize the opposition, they're all insurance companies, and they see it like as a club in a way. And so there are those legitimate issues in the South African context. And we would absolutely take anyone on, but it would have to be with the understanding that your ad is separate to our podcast. And we're going to discuss whatever the hell we want.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, if Fleshlight wanted to sponsor us, we'll be like, yeah, sure. Somehow. Do you know what Fleshlight is, Jonathan?
Yes, I know what Fleshlight is. I'm not that old, Ramon. I wonder if they sponsor you, do you have to like advocate for the product? Is it kind of like, this Fleshlight product, this is an excellent product, and I've been using it for 3 weeks now. And,
haven't you heard our opponents? Like we just said lonely white men who just live in basements all the time. So ironically, most of our followers probably have Fleshlights. So
I'll have you know that I'm not only sad and lonely, but I am lackadaisical as well.
Oh, I was actually going to ask you about how you're lackadaisical. For those
I'm a lackadaisical.
Somewhere in the country and not at home, like on holiday.
Yes, I'm so lackadaisical and non-nation building that in fact I'm in another province over the Christmas period helping sick and injured people, which I volunteered to do actually, just because of how lackadaisical and non-nation building I am. Yeah.
I think Cyril was talking exactly about you. So Luca wants to know about the regulation where potentially properties could have their value cut to 50% of their original value. Well, I mean, this is the old thing. So the ANC created the Valuer General a few years ago. I can't remember. So now if you look at your municipal statement, it says municipal value on there. That was never there before.
Yeah.
So basically, they just created their own way to value property and to give a market value. And you find out that that market value or the municipal value is always much like 40% lower than market value. So I know the person who I rent, so the person who bought this house, that's a lot more than the municipal value that comes in on the utility bill. So that is quite, yeah, that is quite
interesting because the DA recently sort of redid that and actually increased the municipal values because your tax is directly related to your value. So those values have actually gone up significantly, much more market related, or actually in some cases they are higher than what the actual market price is.
So I haven't seen this latest because there's a regulation, but it's. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they put agricultural land at 50% of the market price and then offer that as compensation for expropriation. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And that's quite a normal thing.
All that will really
socialists do this, and that's a very normal thing to do.
But all that'll do is it'll devalue the property market, because what will happen is people will go, well, you're selling the property for X, it's probably worth that. But if the government comes in and takes the property, they can halve that. So as soon as they show intent to actually do that, all property will basically sell for half the price that it's worth, because that'll be the risk. That's all that's going to happen, and so they'll just destroy half the value of the property market. I think there was another question about them collapsing the property market.
It's ready for a crash.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends really on what they do. I think long term the answer to that is yes, because our sort of graph trend, if you were to have capitalism up here and socialism down here, is we're kind of doing that, right? So eventually we're going to get there, and eventually, yes, we get the socialism crash that you would expect. We get Venezuela, we get Zimbabwe, we get Cuba, we get a version. The versions are never identical because countries are different, and the way they go about implementing that is slightly different.
And because real socialism hasn't been tried, Jonathan.
Yeah, of course. But the ultimate result is always hunger, poverty, poor health, all those things that go along with it. So yes, is it headed for a crash? Arguably, yes. The question is when. Is it a year? If they start expropriating lots of property, then it's the day after they expropriate property. If they don't expropriate property, but they just strangle the economy slowly over a few decades, as they plan to do with the National Democratic Revolution, then yes, the property crash happens, but it's probably 10 to 20 years away.
Right. What did I want to say? Well, yes. I think the next 5 years or so, nothing much will change in actual fact. And we'll see on the 2019 election. People keep saying Cyril's got 4 D chairs. I don't see 1 D chairs at the moment. We will see. I think he does want to change the constitution, but he will use it to, take municipal land and give title deeds. And if he does that, that's great. I don't know why you'll need expropriation without compensation or to change the constitution for that. But who knows what the ANC wants to do? No one even knows, let alone themselves. Next question. Do you think BLF will go away in 2019? I don't think so. I actually have a conspiracy that the BLF is funded by Nazis.
Nazis?
Yeah, because they sort of need like the crazy black people wanting to come slaughter you. I think it's great. It's a great opponent to have, so I don't know why.
Nah, they're not Nazis.
I'm not saying the Saterlanders are Nazis, but I think the Saterlanders are happy that BLF exists.
Yeah, I suppose they feed each other in some respects, but I would think the conspiracy that the ANC or the EFF is funding them, or someone who funds those two parties is probably funding them as well. It's that whole thing of, if you show the absolute most radical leftist you can, then the inverted commas moderate leftists suddenly start looking quite reasonable. And so I think that's far more likely. There's someone's funding them. I mean, at this point, the Guptas are probably out. I don't see much reason for them to be funding them. And they form a great foil for the ANC and even for the EFF, because the EFF, who are very radical, look relatively normal in comparison to the BLF.
And they have the luxury of they expelled him for being too radical, and I sort of proving their point for them.
Also, it needs to be understood that Andile is a rent seeker. So even if the BLF does nothing in 2019 in terms of the elections, Andile is not going anywhere. This is his grift. This is what he does. Andile is not going anywhere, and the people who are attached to him who are just also rent seeking aren't going anywhere because it's worthwhile to them.
You break up a little bit, Jonathan. So just let me know if you can in the comment section. Just see if Jonathan breaks up. Just let me know. Okay, finally, Jonathan, you can get to Helen Zille and the Public Protector witch hunt. Firstly, I think this is really a non-story because the Public Protector is useless. Everyone seems to know that. And apparently, the ethics code said even if no one benefits, except poor children, even if they benefit, there's still a violation. It doesn't have to be self-interest or monetary interest or any other interest involved. So either the code's really dumb or the Public Protector's really dumb. I hedge my bets on the latter in this instance. I don't know what more there is to say about this topic.
Well, I mean, it's obviously a political game. The EFF, for example, have already latched onto it and said, Julius Malema retweeted that stupid Barry Roo parody account, which basically posted a picture of Helen Zille and said the face of corruption. So that's the route they want to go. I mean, it is hilarious in some respect, but you must understand that these people are likely to write the history of this country. So in 30 years' time, instead of being written as one of the heroes of South Africa, Helen Zille is going to go down according to the history that gets written as a villain. There's almost no doubt in my mind about that, unless we have a right-wing swing and Bolsonaro type takes over. It's almost impossible that people like Helen Zille, Helen Suzman, any of these people, even Joe Slovo, who frankly is a communist, but he's white and he's Jewish, he's going to get written out of the ANC's history as well before time passes. They, as you can see, they're already embracing further and further far left figures. So Fidel Castro, people who aren't even involved in this country, Lila Khalid, they want to rename Santon Drive after a terrorist who hijacked aircraft and was part of masterminding the Munich attack on the Israeli Olympic team. These are the people that are going to be written into our history as heroes and comrades. So that's really what's kind of going on here. It's a broader picture to demonize. I see it as part of the broader plan. There seems to be a broader plan at the moment to demonize white people as a grouping. So that happened with Cyril Ramaphosa last week, calling all white people basically lackadaisical and that we don't nation build, even though, well, I for one pay hundreds of thousands of rands in tax every year. What's that?
Loser.
Yeah, sorry. Listen, some of us work for the government, as it happens.
Oh, so you're already paid by taxes, and you pay. Oh, so you can't just refund something that's been given to you.
Well, it gets taken away from me before I can decide whether I want to refund it or not. I wouldn't give it back to you, you filthy bastard, but I get forced to. But the point is there was that to demonize. There was Andile at the same time. Once again, if you believe the conspiracy, then it could be part of the same plan. You've now got the Public Protector coming out and basically saying Helen Zille allowing her son to use, and it wasn't that she allowed her son to use iPads. If you understand the story properly, her son approached the department and said he wanted to use the iPads. He then got approval to use the iPads. Helen Zille happened to be the premier at the time. She would have authorized, at some level, there would have been some sort of authorization, but you know, the idea that this is some sort of corrupt action and there was some great benefit. The only benefit I see coming out of this is that some township kids got taught extra maths, which, given that our maths pass rate is dismal and that you only need 30 or 40% to pass, which is not actually a real world level, it's just unbelievable the that this is even a thing. And like you said, a non-story, but I think part of the broader plan to demonize a single group of people, and certainly demonize the people that stand out within that single group of people.
Yeah, well, if you read my tweet, I said something to the effect that it's so good that the ANC and the FF have stopped raping and killing each other to come together to condemn, charity. I think it's wonderful. All this unity, Jonathan, is a wonderful thing. So Christopher asked to discuss religion more. We can. I don't find it that interesting, if I'm really honest with you, Christopher. We had a priest on, also called Chris, a few months ago.
I actually really enjoyed that podcast.
Yeah. No, he was a very nice guy. So I mean, we will try. We'll bring on. Jonathan can bring his rabbi. I can bring. Well, I don't have anyone, but I can try bring someone. It'd be good to get a Muslim actually in, or an imam. But okay, religion is a good topic. Let's do so. So Hein asks, is your goal to build some kind of community? Podcasts don't facilitate this at all. How about having events where people can physically attend? That is a goal, Hein. That is a goal. We were supposed to do something this year, but as we don't get paid to do the podcast, all of it is done for free. And when you don't, I love to get paid, but I love to do stuff for free as well. But if there's just, you have no idea the scale and time you need to organize something. It is actually phenomenal how much time and effort it takes to organize 20 people in a room sometime in the week. We did it once with France Grenier, and it took a good 6 weeks to get that ready.
Yeah, we do have a sort of God, I hate the word, but a conference of sorts in the pipeline. We have discussed it. We know who we want as guests. We know how we want to set it up and all of the rest of it. The problem is, getting it going. We do have a listener and a friend who's volunteered to assist with that. So we're in the process of that. But just to give you some context, Ramon and I are both quite busy in our own rights. So once again, to either organize something, but then also to settle on when exactly we're going to do this, how we're going to market it so that we get as many people as possible to attend and make it a success. Those are the complicating factors. So absolutely a goal. It's just we need to build a bit of a bigger structure before we can do that, certainly on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that's why the podcast needs to make money to a degree where one of us, I think probably me, because I'm self-employed, so I work here at home. This is my study after all. And if I'm self-employed and we have funds, it's a lot easier to just maybe hire, a skivvy to do the legwork, and then we can just make decisions based on that. But that's coming. That is definitely one of my goals. Hi, thank you for mentioning it. Are houses still selling? Yeah, as far as I know. I know a few estate agents. They say there's been a bit of a slowdown, but nothing huge. Well, at least in my area, there's houses for sale every weekend. They seem to be sold.
Yeah, I was actually in the property market not too long ago. It's definitely worse than it used to be. I mean, there was a point when the house market was booming, as far as I understand. I'm no expert in this, but from what I was told by an agent who was with one of the large groups, they'd lost a lot of property agents who basically just stopped working because there wasn't as much of a market anymore. That was over the past sort of 2 years, 2016, 2017, I think. But yeah, I mean, things are uncertain. There's no doubt about that. But I do think that there's still an economy here, and there are still people earning money, and people are still buying houses. I think it's area dependent. Certainly based on building around Johannesburg, I don't travel that much around the country. I see a bit of Cape Town and a bit of sort of Northwest, etc. But I'm not sure what else is happening in the rest of the country. Joburg there's tons of building going on in Joburg. In terms of complexes and new developments. So there's a new 50-story, I'm sure it must be up at 50 stories by now, monstrosity going up in Sandton, which I understand is apartment block. So that's quite interesting that someone's invested in that. I did comment a while back that I hope they weren't using Chinese steel. Although the last time someone did that and a highway bridge collapsed, someone died. I was there. And remember there was going to be all kinds of inquiries and everything. You notice that's gone very quiet.
I don't even know. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Grayston Bridge, Grayston off ramp. There was a sort of temporary bridge over. They were building a pedestrian bridge, and they put scaffolding over the highway. And the scaffolding, there was something wrong with it, or that was what needed to be investigated. Actually, what was wrong with the scaffolding? Had it fallen because of wind? Had anyone knocked it, etc., etc.? Anyway, it collapsed on both sides of the road, and there was at least one death there. But that's gone very, very quiet, which is a bit unfortunate, because when people say, the private market never answers for itself, it's annoying, because they can point to examples like that where the private market hasn't answered for itself.
Just remember, it's a government contract as well. So
yeah, sure, 100%. You skipped the question here, Jonathan. Aren't you scared Ramon goes mainstream and makes everyone an anarchist? Well, look. Frankly, if Ramon made everyone an anarchist, that would be better than the current situation, where I reckon 60% of people are socialists.
Inshallah, brother. Inshallah. My God.
But secondly, no. I mean, he's not going to make everyone an anarchist. It's almost almost an impossibility. So no, I'm not worried about everyone becoming an anarchist. But I think we could have worse things to happen, frankly. And our current situation is probably worse.
Well, the problem is, if everyone's an anarchist, I'll be like a huge status thing. Because I can't be in the majority. There's like a mind limitation where I cannot just agree with people.
You've always got to be the renegade, you see.
Yeah, I've got to be contrarian, and not because I like being contrarian, because I hold strong views that I believe in and that I can justify, whereas many people don't.
When the problem with the anarchy is that. Kilbride is an anarchy, right? But it's not a very nice anarchy, because at the end of the day, there's no there actually isn't those personal agreements between individuals. There's a few people who are clearly in control, or gangs that are clearly in control, and then they run the show and make it quite unpleasant for everyone else. Yeah. So I'm not sure. To get to Ramon level anarchy, you actually need quite an understanding of the social good. What that looks like, non-aggression principle,
what contracts are, why that's important, what culture is,
why you can't violate people's rights unless you have a contract to do so. I think anarchy in South Africa overnight resembles more of what you kind of think anarchy looks like in a movie, and less what anarchy is according to Ramon's definition. But yeah.
Right. So,
how long before the NDR goals reach, Ramon?
Who knows? And the one thing we know for sure is how useless the ANC is. I mean, it took Hugo Chavez, when was he appointed? 1999. And it was a catastrophe by the time he died in 2006, I believe. It took him literally 8 years to destroy Venezuela. ANC's been in power for almost 25, and they've sort of did the opposite for the first 10 years, and they're now slowly destroying it now for the previous the previous 10 years to this year, of course. I don't see it happening anytime soon. If I'm really honest with you, the world's different. Believe it or not, it's really hard to become Venezuela. You have to take away guns first. You have to change the way the politics is done. You have to nationalize small industries, then big industries. Then you have to have people in place to control those things, which have to be competent. You have to have a good army. You have to make sure that the soldiers are fed and well paid. It's actually very hard.
You have to overborrow from the IMF and then not pay them back. You have to run up your national debt beyond what's physically you're able to pay, because you can't get any loans anymore or any investment in your country. No one will buy bonds. So there is a long process to sort of follow. I think, I often, we are a little bit frog in the pot, right? So the question is what temperature does the frog boil at, and what temperature is the water currently? And I often think that we don't notice a lot of abnormalities because we are just not sure at what temperature it is and what temperature we sort of cease to exist. So, or the economy ceases to exist. So that's why it's so difficult to tell.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to dam this, but the cadre deployment, just happens to put in like some of the worst people in power, people that have no skills in actually doing the work properly. And that's been far and away the best thing that's ever happened to this country. Unfortunately, there's a lot of negative consequences, like preventable deaths in health, the worst education system, things like that. I get that. I mean, let's be honest, Jonathan, people like us don't live in Venezuela, but for some millions of others in this country, they've been living in Venezuela for, 100 years. Those that depend on government the most, unfortunately.
I think that's a very good point.
Yeah. So potential government coalition between ANC and EFF. I don't know. I think so. I think you are right. I think Julius has lost a lot of clout these past 2 months because the ANC is a bit smarter than him in this respect. They know that journalists are important to spread the narrative around. So they never overtly attack journalists. They threaten to. They threaten with the media tribunal and they threaten with this, but they never actually take journalists to court, or very few times, as far as I'm aware. They fight the battle in public. Whereas the EFF just says, these people are straight com and they're paid by whatever, Proline. And that's bad politicking, because the journalists have been great for the EFF. So if they go into coalition, I think so. I mean, I think it depends on the terms of amending Section 25 of the Constitution. We know what the EFF's position is, basically nationalise everything. ANC, no one knows what the position is. I saw the head of IMF came in, Christine Lagarde came in yesterday and today, and she says, what sounds, the land reform stuff sounds good. Now, she's a crony, bloody globalist, capitalist, but obviously Cyril didn't say we're going to nationalise everything, but no one knows what he wants. No one knows what the ANC wants with the amendment. So I think it will depend, the coalition will depend on the amendment, personally speaking.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've long held that essentially, Julius, who is the EFF, there is nothing else. If he leaves, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi doesn't hold up the EFF. Julius's ultimate plan is to go back to the ANC, but he's not going back to the ANC as a simple member, and he's certainly not going back in a Minister of Sports and Recreation. He will go back as an ANC NEC top 6 with a direct line to the presidency and a ministry probably like finance or mining or something like that.
I think vice president at the very least, or the top 6.
Sorry?
I'm thinking top 6 minimum.
Yeah, no. Well, top six NEC. It doesn't really matter which ministry he holds then, because then he holds a lot of power. But he would pick a ministry with a lot of ability to do damage, certainly according to his ideological bent. Does that happen in 2019? Maybe not. Does it happen eventually? In my opinion, almost without doubt, unless the power balance swings and the EFF starts to really drain the ANC and they see an opportunity for them to govern without the ANC and to basically break the ANC. And if that happens, then you see the ANC dying and the EFF rising. That's not an impossibility. Ramon talks about national populism and whether we go with left national populism or right national populism. And if we go left national populism, then you get the EFF. If we go right national populism, well, you don't get anyone because we don't have anyone. Currently.
Yeah, but you would get like Salvini in Italy or Trump or Orban in Hungary. Which, I mean, they have their problems as well, but they care about economics. So
yeah, just with regards to Lagarde, I agree with you. I mean, look, these are not people who are trying to cause trouble. They want certain things dealt with. My opinion on the IMF is that the IMF enjoys Africa's poverty. They quite enjoy charging interest on their very large loans and keeping Africa under their thumb. They do not appreciate countries getting out from under their thumb and being able to tell them to get bent. So I would think that the conversation would have been something to the effect of, look, do what you want, don't be too radical, go slowly about it, and as long as you keep paying us we will support you essentially. You know, it's I would the so-called liberal world order, I would think, is very happy with our slow descent into some sort of socialist, inverted commas, socialist democracy.
Socialist, but then we'll be like Norway. That doesn't sound too bad.
Of course we will. Yes, of course we'll be like Norway and Sweden and Denmark. I mean, that'll just be how we are.
Sounds good. It's weird that like the whitest places on earth are what we're trying to emulate. I just find it weird.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I really do hope that, you know, places like Rwanda can kind of buck the trend and can sort of prove that we're capable on this continent of making our own success in our own way, and that, you know, perhaps that success doesn't always look perfect in terms of from a liberal perspective. I mean, Rwanda's far from a liberal country.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's almost a right-wing dictatorship. Right.
In many respects, yeah, and they're still quite brutal in some respects in terms of law enforcement. Some of their legislation removes rights from people, so those are things of concern. But you know, once again, it's the trade-off. It's what do you really want? Because those couple of sort of transgressions, which we can criticize, if they result ultimately in a relatively successful, economically sustainable country, well, then you at least they've got in there, and then you can start having those debates. We're heading in the opposite direction, so
yeah,
of significant concern.
Yeah. Okay. Why am I renting? Well, I can't afford a home loan because I'm self-employed, and I'm sort of happy I'm renting and don't want property after the EWC shit. So yeah, that's why I'm renting. But then again, I hate debt, and I would never go into like a 20-30 year loan agreement with a bank. That just makes me feel iffy. Right. So why are you still here, Jonathan? Why are you still in SA? What makes you stay here? I don't say the weather or.
Oh no, not the weather. I'm not a big fan of the heat. Actually, as it happens. But look, and I've said it on. I think when we were on Ronaldo's show, I mentioned that if you can, you should leave, and if you don't leave, you should at least have a plan B. I'm still here because I have certain work commitments and family commitments that prevent me from leaving. Essentially, I'm also South African and nothing else. I have no claim to any other country, and so leaving is a complex process, and becoming more complex, I might add. Countries are wising up to South Africans leaving in droves, and they are making things quite difficult. I have many friends and colleagues looking at leaving the country, and it's not so simple. On a more complex point on that is that they make it very difficult for doctors to leave. So if I was a manager at Edgar's and I said, well, they're going to go out of business soon, let me move to Australia and manage a store in Australia rather, I'd probably be able to do that within about a year. Get an Australian visa and go manage some sort of retail store there. As a doctor, it's a far more complex process, much more costly, much less guarantee, and without permanent residency either. So these are a lot of the complex factors, and so that's why I'm still here. Will I definitely stay? I can't say that. Will I definitely leave? I can't say it either. I will look at a plan B though. So yeah. I will look at what if EWC happens, and it's not about EWC. I saw there was a question, EWC, all the experts say the country will collapse. Well, yes, it will, because it's got nothing to do with land. It's not about the land. It's about the property rights. The minute you remove property rights, remember, property isn't land. It's everything you own. It's even your thoughts, so your patents. You come up with a nice idea, and government likes that idea. They just take it away from you. You don't own it anymore. And so once that happens, then that is a collapsing point. And I think then you've got to be able to have a plan B of, okay, what now?
Yeah, well, I'm here. Okay, I can move if I wanted to, rather easily, but I choose not to because I actually enjoy being here. If I'm honest with you, it's nice to be an oppressed minority. in a country.
You don't want to join the yellow vest, man.
I'm still joking. We're not really an oppressed minority. I think they want to make us far more oppressed than we are at the moment. And basically, I think this could be the blueprint for a type of anarchist balkanization that we haven't seen before in South Africa. It's happening already. People are taking government services under their own banner. They're patrolling their own neighborhoods. They're creating their own communities. And I foresee the national government running out of money. Maybe it's a bit of hyperinflation. But we have cryptocurrencies, 3D printing, the internet. All these things can make life here bearable at worst, or very good at best. If you go to the waterfall estate here in Joburg, I mean, you got thousands of million rand houses that are being built at such a pace, and sooner or later, something like a waterfall estate will just continue building the wall, and the wall will finally meet with each other and lock out everyone else. They got their own school, their own shopping mall, their own hospital. You'll have an armed guard to take you to the airport, or even helicopter shuttle taking you to the airport to fly to wherever you need to go. And I foresee cities, degrading quite a bit. So, like, the whole of Joburg will be Hillbrow, essentially. We got gangs, controlling turfs and things like that. So, I mean, it's exciting in a way. We could be the blueprint. I mean, Tesla is releasing these batteries that can power a whole house. They're still expensive for the moment, but you can go off grid and live, completely out of the clutches of government right now. So imagine if they run out of money and they get even more useless than they actually are. That could be very, very interesting, and that's why I like it here. If I'm really honest, I do like it here. I've been to many places in the world. If I had to go, I'll move to a ranch in Texas. As soon as I land, buy 2 AR-15s at Walmart.
Well, someone asked actually if you could choose between France and Portugal. Where are you going?
Oh, no, I'm going to Portugal because what is the second most spoken language in France, Jonathan?
Arabic.
French.
Ah, what's the first most spoken language?
Arabic. That's the joke.
Oh, okay.
France is gone. France is part of that whole EU thing. It will never be the same country. It's either going to go really, really right-wing populist, and maybe there's a bit of a chance, but I don't. Yeah, I've been to France on numerous occasions, and it's just not.
Do you think if just on France, because you know it would be better,
but naturally socialist there for some reason.
But if France had less, if Marine Le Pen, if it had a Marine Le Pen, but who was less right wing. So I mean, a lot of people worry about her because of, she's quite far right on many issues. If they had someone who was like her, but a little bit less far right, do you think they might actually vote that way?
Well, she's really more popular than their current president.
Yeah, but when it comes to an election, nobody votes for her because then they go, she's a Nazi, and they've kind of got a point on some issues.
Well, her father was arguably not a Nazi, but very close by. Like he sort of questioned the Holocaust and things like that.
Yeah.
Actually, my family knows him, Jean Le Pen. They know him quite well, and he's like those old British people that think colonialism was a great thing. Like he's sort of like that. He's not evil. He just has these weird ideas and doesn't like Jews very much. Unfortunately.
And weird ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just quickly we're still on the foreign country thing, and so where would I move if I could chuck tomorrow? Well, no. If the assumption is that you could, if we had the perfect libertarian open border situation, if I could go anywhere and it wouldn't be an issue, and I could just go start working there tomorrow with a visa or whatever it was, that would definitely be the US, without a doubt. I still think it's the freest country on earth, and I think there's a lot of value to that. And then, yeah, then, just for practicality reasons, every other sort of English-speaking country in the world. I don't speak any of the European languages, and Europe worries me quite a lot. So, yeah, Canada, Oz, UK, New Zealand, although God forbid New Zealand.
Yeah.
But yeah, just from a practicality perspective, I mean, I think the people that go to Oz, the reality, I've been to that country twice, and it's very easy to sort of integrate there. It's some of the things are very similar to South Africa. A lot of the memes of the people are exactly that. They're memes. Most of the people are relatively nice and pleasant. Same as the memes about South Africans, right? And so I think that's why people find it so easy to move across there. But if it could be anywhere in the world, it would be the US. Someone said that Luca, the DA is going to lose lots of votes in 2019. Yes, they are, Luca. Yes, they are.
I hope so. I really do. I really hope they lose a lot of
So,
votes. They need to lose a lot of votes, I'm afraid. Because, sorry, Jonathan, but it's a bit. DA has been leaderless since Helen Zille. Helen Zille did a lot. She tried to be diverse, and she tried to bring in up-and-coming black leaders who then stabbed her in the back when it was most opportune to do so. So Helen Zille started the right, despite us liking her quite a bit. But Musi is just so awful. He's probably a lovely guy, but as a leader, as someone with character, someone with he's probably has integrity, fine. But as someone who can, no one's ever going to kill someone else for him. No one's ever going to praise that he survives. And if they do, it's like those weird Afrikaans people who live in Springs or something, because the black man can speak good English, therefore he's my savior. That was probably very racist. But the lack of leadership in that party is mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling. We've come off a decade of absolute hell from the ANC. And the DA's got no response. They don't know what to do. It is a phenomenal phenomenon. And I just can't see them digging themselves out of this.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed this at length, but essentially, they're leaderless. I know for relative fact that the way they run that party is that they do polling on a weekly basis, and then whatever the polling says, they just basically follow on a weekly basis. So it doesn't matter what their ideology is. It doesn't matter where they're meant to be going as a party. They just follow whatever the polling says. So they're constantly following polling. And this is why their messaging is so off, because 1 week the polling says one thing and 4 weeks later they'll say something else. And so within a month they can change their angle of attack completely, and you can be like, is this the same party? They've also got the problem of essentially an SJW core, which is trying to take over the party. And that's the reason that the DA will not get my vote next year. Phumzile van Dam can take full responsibility for that. She appreciates taking responsibility for that, for what it's worth. She thinks that she's managed to make sure that some racist won't vote for the party. So cool. If that's her attitude and that's her belief, it's great. I don't need Phumzile van Dam's approval. But those types of attitudes from people like her and others in her party who think that these sort of cultural battles and racist or racial division is a good way to go, are going to lose that party big time votes. I think it's the combination of poor leadership and then just bad, what would you call it, moral fortitude.
Yeah, bad indoctrination. And funny enough, there's been 3 or 4 parties that have been launched in the past month or so. There's the LOL, there's the NUMSA, and there is
African Content Movement. What's her name?
Cloudy, and yeah, that's about it, I think. Now, all of these parties, I would argue, probably are sort of just fragmenting the ANC. They're all like offshoots of the ANC, essentially. The DA is at its most vulnerable, and no party ever comes off to the slightly right of the DA with a better message than them. I think that will eat up a lot of DA votes. Cope, not really. I see Heidi asking who to vote for next year. Well, I don't vote Heidi at all. So I wouldn't vote for anyone. But there's no one to the right of the DA in terms
Yeah.
of fiscal policy or even social policy. I mean, I imagine if someone came out and said, abortion's a bit wrong because Jesus said so, people would be like, yeah, I agree with that. I think quite a lot of people will agree with that. So I find the DA very vulnerable, and there's a huge gap between them and the Freedom Front Plus, for example, in terms of, and the IFP. But the IFP is not really ideological, it's more ethnic.
Well, the IFP actually is I wish they were better at both marketing themselves and repositioning themselves, because some of their policies are very, very liberal.
Yeah.
And I mean liberal in a classical liberal sense.
Yeah, well, they're liberalists. They want the provinces to have more power. So that's a good thing, really.
Yeah, and they probably, if they branded themselves properly and were honest about where their policy positions are, they would basically be a centre-right party.
Yeah, but let's be honest, Jonathan, the UDM, the ACDP, the IFP, all these small parties, they are literally companies. Treasury pays them out, £1 million per seat per year, and they have to take fact-finding missions to New York City, which is somehow always New York City at Christmas time, and the fact-finding party members is Bantu Olomisa and his kids and his wife. So these are just little, personal entities of the.
It's what I said about Delil. The reality is that she doesn't have to give a fuck about the country. She just has to get 43,000 people to agree that she does give a fuck.
Yeah.
And then what happens is she gets Parliament. She gets a 1.5 million rand or thereabouts, just under that per year. That doesn't include her free housing, 2 free cars.
Do MPs get free cars, John? I'm sure that's
free food. Yeah,
no,
they get. As far as I understand, the parliamentary handbook allows them to have 2 vehicles every 4 years. I think it is.
Really,
I'm stand to be corrected on that. So they get to have 2 vehicles that are like 3 Series BMW level cars. As far as I know.
Right. I know they get 86 flights, they get data, a cell phone, a parliament, a
free food,
parliamentary village, 80% discount at the parliamentary bar, which is probably where EWC came from. So I know there's a lot of perks to the job. Like any other.
I think the EWC came from a parliamentary toilet, but yeah.
I mean, to think Delil wants to change the country is laughable. She just wants a cushy job for the next 5 years, as do all these other smaller parties. It'd be great to see one party that actually comes up, made by people who aren't politicians and who say, we're doing this as a public duty because that's what it's meant to be. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. Someone mentioned COPE as well. I mean, I think you could argue a vote for COPE based on an issue. If you could be an issue voter, a lot of people have said, they voted for COPE before and it was a waste of a vote. Well, it depends. It depends how you view your vote. If you say, well, COPE has sort of sat next to AfriForum and been pretty hardcore on property rights and against EWC, and actually have stood against that in a far better way than, say, the DA even have. Because if you remember, in Parliament, the DA had to sort of, Glynis Breitenbach, I think it was, who had to stand up and tell Ernst Rutz where to get off, because she had to just virtue signal her liberalism. So that's, you could make an argument to vote for that party next year just based on that single issue, and understand that on other issues that are a problem. I mean, if you go back and listen to that podcast we did with thank you, Masiwa Lekota. If you listen to the Q&A we did with Masiwa Lekota, you can hear he basically is no different to Helen Zille in terms of believing in a capable state, and he very much believes in a party running the country and a government being very much in control. And if there's a problem, you fix problems by legislating. You don't fix problems by letting the market fix them. Yeah. So the huge issues with COPE, I mean, COPE is not really the party that you want to be in government. But I think we can all acknowledge that they're not going to be in power. They're not going to get enough votes to be in power. But will they be a loud enough voice if you give them an extra 5 seats in Parliament? Will they be a loud enough voice against EWC, for example? Probably. And will they give a step up to, you know, people who are fighting EWC like AfriForum? And will that be a good thing? Almost definitely. So you could probably make that argument as a COPE vote. You could make similar arguments for the IFP in terms of their stance on drugs. You could probably make an issue argument for the DA in terms of if you believe in the capable state. You know, these. If you're a single issue voter, then, and let me tell you, in the United States, for example, single issue voters are huge things. Barack Obama arguably won the presidency as a single issue voter the first time. Bush won the presidency the second time as a single issue voter amongst middle class white women. So it's you know, these are things to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been here for an hour and 11 minutes already, Jonathan. I have to be up at 4 because even though it's so called the holidays, you know, some of us have a CrossFit to do at 5 in the morning. I just had to drop it in there. I vape and I do CrossFit. I'm not a vegan yet, but you know.
But you vape.
I'm not a bunny either. So Benjamin actually wants to know, how did we two meet and decide to start the Renegade Report? Very simple. One word, Twitter. We met on there.
Ramon was a troll extraordinaire.
What do you mean was?
You lost your shine a bit, man.
Extraordinaire on Twitter. So we met on Twitter. We probably fought, and then we went to the DMs and we met once or twice for coffee, I believe. And then someone actually said, when are you two starting a podcast? And that gave us the idea to do it, and that's how it started. Almost 3 years now, Jonathan. We toddlers.
Yeah, 3 years in March.
Toddlers.
Yeah. 3 years in March, and you know, going quite well. I think one of the lone voices in the space, and I think we've inspired some other voices, certainly. Germ, for example, is getting quite involved in this space. Sikle is getting involved in this space. So yeah, it's good. It's good that we've got a growing network.
I saw Big Daddy Lifty last week, and he's basically just shamelessly copying us. That's all he's. This is what we did. It's like, yeah, no, I'm just copying you.
He's even copying my religion.
Well, it just shows how inclusive Judaism is. You got a big Zulu guy from KZN. He's like almost orthodox at this rate.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, so I think we're going to end it there. It's 9:15. So, I mean, thank you for tuning in. It's been great. We have a consistent 40 viewers. So that's 40 people that are more informed than an hour ago. So if you're on Patreon, you can still support us there. We're just not going to publicize Patreon at all going forward. If you quit Patreon, please feel free to do so. We understand completely. And then hopefully mid to end January, we'll have some big news with our website and what we're going to do going forward. There was a thing about, will we use YouTube? Yes. I think the podcast will become a lot more. It'll still be audio only, but I think YouTube is a very important aspect of it going forward as well. For a myriad of reasons. In terms of advertising, it's quite nice because you can just hold the product and just say, this is great, I'll use it, especially if it's vape. If you own a vape shop, let me know, we will host you for free, basically. And also, I think the interaction is much better, of course, because you can see your comments right here. So YouTube will be a very important evolution of the podcast going forward, but not to the detriment of the audio. Very important as well.
Good. All right. Thank you.
All
and
right.
I don't think we'll do this again until next year. So, you know, everyone who's celebrating Christmas, have a good one, and Happy New Year and all the rest of that.
Yeah, absolutely. See you in the new year. All the best. Cheers.
Cheers.